Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Locker Room, our weekly podcast where we shine a light on all of the student athletes here in the Bayou region. I am Stan Gravo. He is Dustin Robichaud, our graphic designer here at Terrebonne General. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, Stan. Happy Monday.
Uh, I thought you were going to come up with another. Usually you have a holiday. You need to start looking at your calendar and seeing what Monday it is today.
Well, it's actually Florence Nightingale's birthday, if that helps.
Is that true? Well, it is hospital week for a lot of your healthcare centers around the country, so I'm sure that sort of ties in.
Potentially. Last week was Nurses Week, so maybe that
I
has.
didn't even realize that. Yeah, I would imagine that does. That's why we had the cardboard cutout
Yes,
of
yes.
Miss Nightingale in our hall, which was kind of creepy, folks. It's a little bit. Listen, to all of you folks who are in the healthcare field, you do a wonderful job for sure. And it's one of those unsung hero type things, I think. And I've always thought that, especially when we were in the COVID situation and all of the things that were going on with COVID and everything. That being said, we do have a lot of sports going on simply because it is spring. And when it is spring and it is the close of the school year, you know you have all of the championships culminating. I am going to talk a lot about track and field later in the show. We're going to talk about our two representatives that are going to be in the baseball state championships over in Sulphur. We'll do that with Casey Gisclair, as we have Casey on a weekly basis. Track and field happened this weekend. So you have all of your athletes from the area who went up to Baton Rouge. Single A actually happened on Thursday. Double and triple A happened on Friday. And on Saturday, it was 4A and 5A. Notice I didn't say divisions. There are no divisions. It all revolves around classification. They do not separate public and private when it comes to track and field. So a little bit about how our local kids did, because we want to give them all a shout out. First, let's start with 5A, obviously the biggest high schools in the state of Louisiana, and we have a few in our area that compete in that division. And Central Lafourche was your only local team that had a couple of winners in that. Caden Adams, the shot putter, who is really good, folks. This is not the first go round for Caden. He's won a state championship before. He won it again. He threw the shot 60 feet, 4.5 inches. That's one heck of a throw for him, so congratulations to Caden for another first-place finish on the 5A level. And the Central Lafourche 4x800 meter relay team, which has had a tremendous year all year long, they do it again. They are your only two local school finishers in first place. So congratulations to those two. As a matter of fact, on the 5A level, we didn't have very many that finished in the top 5. And consider Central Lafourche had 2 that got first place finishes. That's awesome. And you get more points for, obviously, the 4x800 meter relay. So Central Lafourche showed very well in the state championship on Saturday. Let's drop down to 4A. In 4A, first the boys who got first place finishes. And we had 4 local individuals, 4 boys who got first place finishes. First, in the long jump from Vanderbilt Catholic, Cameron Ritrack. Cameron jumped 23 feet 8 inches. Mark that out. Yeah, can you jump 23 feet? Mark that out on your floor, folks, and see just how far that is. That's an impressive jump, and he's been jumping well all year long. So again, Cameron Ritrack wins the long jump. Blake Guidry just pretty much has wiped out the pole vault all year long. The junior got another year from E.D. White. Jumped, not his best, but he jumped 13 feet, 11 and a half inches. By the way, mark that off on a wall and see how high that is. And I'm not going up on a pole with it. Have you ever tried the pole vault before?
I have not, no.
Yeah, that's a little tough. Also, first place finisher in the discus, Jack Redding of South Lafourche High School. He threw the discus 168 feet, 1 inch. That is a great throw. And a young man who had a couple of high finishes, but this one was obviously the highest in first place. Marcus Thomas of Ellendale Memorial High School ran the 110-meter hurdles in 14 seconds and 86 hundredths of a second. So that's pretty quick, especially when you're jumping over hurdles, So congratulations to Marcus. Look at the girls who finished in first place, and there was one from our Bayou region in 4A, and that was Tiana Stewart. She was a terrific basketball player, most valuable player in all of Division II, and she goes out in track and field, picks up a shot put, and throws it almost 40 feet. So congratulations to Tiana. our only first place finisher in 4A. We did have a couple of third place finishers. Elizabeth Rodrigue of ED White ran the 1600 meter run in 5 minutes, 11 seconds, and 68 hundredths of a second. So congratulations to her for her third place finish. And to ED White's 4x800 meter relay team. Those women went out and picked up a third place finish. So congratulations to them. But we have a whole lot more, and we're going to go first through fifth place on all of these. And 4A, the boys, let's take a look at those who finished in second place. Logan Benning of ED White, who just signed to continue his education at Nicholls State University. He finishes second in the javelin. He throws at 176 feet 8 inches. Matthew Cortez of ED White, only a junior, he throws a shot put 48 feet 10 inches. Jalen Coleman got 2 second places, and one of them was a photo finish that they looked at forever, and that's really tough. He loses to a young man from Bruley in a photo finish in the 100-yard dash. But the other one that he finished second in was the 200-meter dash, where I said yards. I gotta get in America, man. Wait, America now uses the meter system for track and field, but not for anything else. The rest of the world uses the meter system for everything. We now do it in track and field. So if I say yards in there, it is an honest mistake. It is the 200 and the 100 meter dash. And he ran that in 21 seconds and 52 hundredths of a second. Finishing in third place locally in 4A, Noah Lane got 2 third place finishes. He's a Morgan City product. He did that in both the 1600 meter run and the 800 meter run. And Marcus Thomas, the individual from ED White I mentioned earlier, got a third place finish in the 300 meter hurdles, which is, I think, is the toughest race of all of them. Running 300 yards while jumping over hurdles. You got to be special to do that. Moving on in 4A girls. So we're back to 4A girls. In fourth place, we had 4 finishers. Eva Borda of South Lafourche finished 4th in the shot put. Carolyn Robinson of ED White finished 4th in the pole vault. Chloe Douglas of ED White, only an 8th grader, folks, finished 4th in the 400 meter run. And Elizabeth Rodrigue, who actually scored for ED White in another event, also scored in 4th place in the 800 meter run. Moving on, 5th place finishes. These are girls from the local area. Caroline Email of South Lafourche was the pole vault 5th place finisher. She jumped almost 10 feet. ED White's 4x200 meter relay team and their 4x400 meter relay team were 4th in the state, and fifth. And Vanderbilt Catholic's 4x100 meter relay team was 5th in the state also. Moving on to the boys. And if you see all the graphics popping up, that's because Dustin's on the ball, and I have to look down to make sure I'm getting all of this right now. Here we go. The boys who finished in 4th place. This is 4A. This is our biggest concentration of schools in the bioregion, 4A schools. We have the most 4A schools in our bioregion of all of our schools. So obviously you're gonna have the most finishers. So here we go. Again, 4A boys who finished in 4th place. Jock Billiard of South Lafourche was in 4th place in the javelin. Trevon James of Ellender Memorial High School was 4th place in the high jump. Josh Guidry of South Lafourche was 4th place in the 1600 meter run. And Nathaniel Thompson of ED White was 4th in the 200 meter dash. And then we had 3 5th place finishers. Remember, you scored valid points if you finish in the top 5. In 5th place from South Lafourche was Jacob Galliano in the pole vault. Ben Rodrigue of ED White finished in 5th place in the triple jump, and Yuri Torres of South Lafourche finished in 5th place in the 400 meter run. By the way, Ben Rodrigue just signed to continue his education at Nicholls State in track and field. So nice way to go out, finishing 5th place in his event. And then we get to the 2 smaller schools. That would be Homer Christian and CCA. And we have a couple of kids who did well with that. First, 3rd place finishers in the girls. This is again 1A track and field, which happened on Thursday. Maddie Carey, she actually wins 2. The terrific basketball player goes out on the track and she wins the third place in the 300-meter hurdles and third place in the long jump. That's really awesome. A lot of points scored for CCA by Maddie Carey, and she was the only young lady who scored for that particular school. And the only young man who scored for his school, Homer Christian, was Logan Bartison, who actually scored fifth place in the javelin. He throws at 138 feet, and Logan is actually our reigning Outstanding Scholar of the Month here in Terrebonne Parish from Homer Christian. So he does it on the field and he does it in the classroom. That is a terrific honor. I know that was a lot of names, but they deserve to have their names called up. Top 5 finishers in our Louisiana High School Athletic Association state track meet. And these kids all from the local area. One little added note, E.D. White finished third. So as a team title, you obviously have to culminate all of these points. We didn't come very close in most of the divisions, except for the boys from E.D. White, who finished third in the state. Interestingly enough, in all other sports, it's split between private and public. We tell you that all the time. They don't do it in track and field, right? E.D. White finishes third. The 2 teams ahead of them are public schools. So if they would have split track like they do everything else, E.D. White would have won a state championship in boys track and field. Just thought I'd add that little note in there just to give them a little bit of props along the way. So that wraps up track and field. Basically, all of our sports are wrapped up. There's just one left, and that's baseball. And we're going to have Casey in to talk about the track that CCA and E.D. White are taking. Always happy that Casey gives us some time. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing fine, man. How about yourself?
Busy time for you, I'd admit. I'm just, one of the things I said to Casey right before we came on air is I hope he's got his car tanked up, because I'm sure he'll be making some trips to Sulphur. It was a good weekend for a couple of our teams in the area. CCA, which you guys actually covered. Let's talk about CCA a little bit. What was the atmosphere like at that game? How did it go? How just your thoughts.
It was a wild atmosphere for a Saturday afternoon. There were a lot of people there. A lot of people from St. Frederick as well. They traveled well from the Monroe area, which was crazy because they had been in Houma since Thursday from what they were telling us. They had their air horns. They were roaring. They get off to a 1-0 lead like 2 minutes into the game, draw a leadoff hit batter and then an RBI double. So they're leading going into the bottom of the 4th. And it's like, well, CCA's down in the late innings. This is what we've been waiting to see. They scratch 2 across, then they run rule them the next inning. So everybody was waiting to see how they would handle that situation. I think they handled it pretty well. They're going to Sulphur, 2 wins away from, an undefeated season.
2 things that were sort of on the peripheral related to that. And they both happened I happened to know about them because I was actually in Hammond for my grandson's little travel ball tournament. And one of them is Zach Hebert, Zach is actually the brother of Brock Hebert, terrific baseball player. Zach was a terrific baseball player too. They both pretty much run the farm, right? Well, that team, St. Frederick's, went to the farm and worked out since Thursday and hit. And Zach said one thing, and now Zach went to CCA. Zach is sort of a hog, right? He's one of Joe's disciples. And he said the one thing that was impressive was as a kid who signed with LSU, 2 things about him. One was how well he hit when they just went watch him hitting in the cages there at the farm. And 2 is how fast he is, that he's just like super fast. And like he said, he's the fastest high school kid I ever saw in the 60, home plate to first base. So I thought that was interesting. And that was sort of before the game started. And I went, oh, but he doesn't pitch. So I'm not, it's not like you're running a guy who can throw the ball, 97 miles an hour up there against CCA. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if CCA wouldn't crank it around the park anyway. The other thing was while we were there at that, 11U baseball tournament, everybody was glued in, man. They were following you guys. They were following wherever they could find something, game changer to get the folks at E.D. White where they were playing. And everybody was pulling for CCA. Everybody from our area, obviously, was pulling for CCA and for E.D. White to make it to the state championship. So it was really fun to be there and kind of see all of that happening. As I was tuning in, following the CCA game, the one thing that I notice is that they sort of never flinch. And after every game, I say after every game, just about definitely every playoff game, I'll get a call from Joe just to chat. I think Joe's got nervous energy, and I don't think he's as nervous anymore as he was. So I think he's gotten to a point of I don't know what the word is, solitude, whatever it may be. I think he understands now, and he's like, man, now it's past us having to tell the kids what to do. The kids are now just like taking it to another level. What is that feeling like when you're there? Like, did you think this could be trouble for them in the late innings? Or did you also think, yeah, it's a matter of time?
I didn't think they were in trouble at any point. And I'll be honest, I even looked over. Truck was sitting to my left when it was about 3 or 4 to 1. I told Truck, I said, Truck, you could start up your vehicle. This is gonna be a run rule. And he said, what? No, yeah, like you could just sense that whenever the tsunami hit, it was gonna take the boat and the land and everything with it. And that's exactly what happened. And look, the thing with the Lions stand is, of course, they got great pitching, and we've talked about that all year long. And one thing I'm actually going to mention is Joe actually threw a little curveball with his pitcher on Saturday, which was something that maybe we could share. But their offense is so deep, 1 through 9. I mean, we saw Case and Perry at the bottom of the order have great at-bats. The Luke kid at the bottom of the order having great at-bats. These are kids that are sparking big rallies to where Cantor, didn't hit a home run Saturday, but he didn't need to because, the bottom of the order was doing some big work and doing some big damage. It was awesome to see 1 through 9. Those guys they're the real deal, man.
They hadn't been away from home in quite some time, so I'm wondering how that's going to equate when you get out to Sulphur. Joe said something interesting to me yesterday. We were talking because I was just curious as to what their agenda is. As a matter of fact, we're doing this late morning on Monday. They're on the road. They're going up today. He said, and I get this, and I don't want to take this out of context where everybody says, oh, well, if you're a high school coach, you're going to say this at the end of the year. I don't care if you were 0-36 or you're 36-0. You would say, I love my kids. I'm going to battle with my kids, right? Yep. He said this, and he said, Stan, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, there's guys, obviously with me with the Hogs in the summer, I look at everything, and this is him speaking right now. I'm paraphrasing, certainly. And he's saying, I look at the landscape, and usually every year I'm like, man, that kid's something at school C, and that kid's something at school E, and I wouldn't mind having that kid. He said, I like who I got. I don't need anybody from another school. And I'm thinking this is probably as close to reality as you could be with. I don't need necessarily anybody from another school. I'm not only good 1 through 9, I'm good 1 through 13 or whatever the case may be. Would you agree with that?
100%. And look, it's a great segue to what I was going to talk about pitching wise. All week, Joe's coming on the radio and he's telling us, we're throwing Gisclair. We're throwing Gisclair. We're throwing Gisclair. It was a smokescreen the whole time. They on Saturday roll out the lineup. They're throwing the lefty. They're throwing Champagne. They thought it was a better matchup. They thought it was a great situation to have Gisclair available Tuesday to pitch in the semifinals. And no one batted an eye. All the young man did was, after giving up a run in his first 10 pitches, shut him out the rest of the game. Like, they got dudes. They got dudes that are – and look, in the second or third inning, the young man runs into a little bit more of a pickle. They got Dudak go warm up, and I'm thinking to myself, well, they put Dudak in, he's going to start mowing down. Feel like they got arms, they got bats, they've got belief in one another, which I think is very important. Yeah, man, you're 36-0 now for a reason, and it's because of all those little things.
Agree, and like you said, and it's a statement you make often where you say iron sharpens iron. That's what the beneficiary of all of this is when you play good. And listen, this is a team that went out and pretty much took care of Brother Martin. I mean, it was close, but and it was a scrimmage, but they outscored Brother Martin. Look, E.B. White's got a state championship. They handled E.D. White. So this is a good baseball team. It's good at it. I'm just so disappointed it's not best 2 out of 3. I certainly wish it was 2 out of 3.
If it was 2 out of 3, you could start sizing up the rings now. You could start printing the shirts now. But I think in a way, if they're able to close this out and it's not 2 out of 3, I think it would make it even all the more impressive, knowing that they had a game 3 in every game of their postseason and still were able to come through. I think that'd make it even more impressive.
I agree. So Ouachita Christian is next, thorn in the side of CCA, number 12 seed. They're good. I don't know how good. The same kid that threw against them 2 years ago, according to Joe, is probably who they're going to see. And he can play. At one time, he was an LSU commit, but I think LSU probably backed off of him a little bit because I think in the last 2 years, if you don't have a velocity coming out of high school at about 105 miles an hour, you don't get signed in the SEC. So that being said, it's not going to be easy. I would have thought, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit, that the championship game might even be a little bit easier if CCA can get there, simply because CCA has the depth to get there. And he mentioned that with Riverside playing Vermilion Catholic on the other side, probably Riverside's going to have to throw their gun. And it sounds like Vermilion Catholic may not be throwing their gun in that first game. So it's going to be interesting, but nonetheless, it's going to be a good interesting, I think.
100%. And what you just said, I was not aware of. If Riverside beats Vermilion Catholic and CCA beats Ouachita Christian, there's a chance that it's a 14-0 championship game in the favor of CCA. Because Riverside does not have that true second guy that you would trust. So just hearing what you said there, if Riverside squirts that one out, there's a chance that Wednesday could be not just a win, but a very big win for CCA.
And it happened last year, folks. For all of you who didn't know what happened last year, after Doyle beat CCA, Glenbrook. Glenbrook just got blasted, man. They just, when you have one gun, again, I wish it was best 2 out of 3, but that's not the way they do it. But Joe is cautiously optimistic.
Sure.
And I'm sure when he talks to you, and again, thanks for covering that, because again, I know you realize to a certain extent how much that means to the community. But when you're up there and, in Hammond, right, amongst teams from Baton Rouge and all, you have all of these, the LBAs and the Farm and the Mud Bugs and the Crawdads, and they're all it was a little unity between all of them, hoping that our bioregion teams would come through. And by the way, the second bioregion team did come through, and that's E.D. White. You've said this often. E.D. White was close in a lot of games. It kind of goes back to the days of, South Terrebonne being under 500 going into the playoffs. But it's when you're playing well, and obviously E.D. White has found a little something. I don't know what it is. Can you put your finger on it?
I don't know that they could put their finger on it. It just sort of happened. And they were 1-7, Stan. They were 2-8. They were 4-10. I mean, this is a team that we were wondering, like, hey, are they even going to make the playoffs at all? I mean, you figured that at some point they were going to start to turn it around, and then they do. But even in district, they almost get run-ruled by South Lafourche, and, they're having bumps in the road along the way. They get into the playoff bracket, and it's like, okay, well, now's go time. They lose their first game of the playoffs to Acadiana Renaissance Charter, and then from there, they have really settled in. They win those final 2 against Acadiana, roll against St. Charles, roll against Hannon, and I think the most impressive thing, Stan, was they were down in game 2. It's easy when you everything's easy street and you're beating everybody and you're never trailing. It's easy. When you got to come back and score 3 in the bottom of the 7th, and that's exactly what you do, that's good stuff. And that's a team that, on paper, they're probably not favored against Turlings. On paper, Turlings is probably the team most people expect to win. But I tell you, Turlings is probably looking at what E.D. White has done for the last month and are saying, we're not all that crazy about playing them either. When you see all the road wins that they've accumulated, all the great pitching that they've accumulated. Stan, you look at this in the postseason, they haven't allowed more than 3 runs in a game, the whole playoffs. So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, no, they've got pitching depth. They've got arms. They're going to be a tough out, man. Look out. They've got a very real shot at, I say cutting down the nets. That's not the right phrase. They got a very real shot at dogpiling out there in Sulphur, man.
It is impressive of what they've done. And I was about to say, I think the pitching was good. I didn't realize that was the limited number of runs that they've given up to this point. I also think that there is something to be said for a team of destiny. In the bottom of the 7th inning, they're down 2-0. Hannon had basically controlled the game. Don't get me wrong. E.D. White got some runners in scoring position. Jonathan Lee got thrown out at the plate, and he got tossed. And I'm going to tell you what, I ain't getting in Jonathan Lee's way because he took the catcher out from Hannon. He took him out.
Yes, he did.
But he was trying to make a play. It was a hard baseball play. When they get into that inning, they were down to 2 outs, and it doesn't look good for them. Carter Douglas comes through for them. A couple other kids come through. But when there was a little lazy ball hit to second base, and the second baseman threw it away from Hannon, and it allowed the tying run to score, that's when I thought that's when you sort of have to rise to the occasion, one, and Hannon didn't, the agony of defeat and the joy of victory. And two, you're a team of destiny just a little bit. Then to add to that, and I'm going to shamelessly plug him, my nephew gets up to bat Owen Porsche. And it's 2 out, and he's got 2 strikes. And he has had, and his dad, Matt Porsche, who is a chiropractor there in town, in Thibodaux. And everybody loves Matt because Matt helps all of the teams in the community with deep tissue massages, and he gives them the sleeves and all. He loves all of the high schools. So I'm pulling for Owen, and I'm thinking this is, he's had all these little stress fractures in his back all year long and hasn't played really like he did last year. And when he hits it, I implore everybody, you need to go find number 7 for E.D. White. It's one of those things where it's fun just to see how kids react. And obviously they're going to a state championship. But so Owen gets up and he singles, and the kid number 7 is on deck. And for whatever reason, I can't remember who it is. He just goes nuts, and I'm thinking, that's it. That's the joy of all of this. It doesn't matter if it's Turlings Catholic or the New York Yankees, man. We're going to Sulphur, and that's fun. And then I realized how hard it is to do that year in and year out. I see teams in the area who are good. Joe's had those kind of teams where you go, God, when Gavin Dugas played, they sort of South Lafourche a couple of years ago. I'm going, oh my God, look at this team, how good it is, and how sort of lucky you have to be. So and I'm not saying that everything with E.D. White is luck. Obviously, I'm not saying that. They won it 2 years ago, so I'm not saying that. What I am saying is don't take it for granted. I'm sure Joe's pumping that up to his CCA kids too, right?
100%. And look, to add to the story that you just shared, we have Matt Plitt on the radio. Matt Plitt is a great guy, but Matt Plitt is a man of few words. He does not say a whole lot whenever we have him on the radio. And I'm watching that last base hit, and he's over there coaching third, and he does one crank, he does a second crank, then he realizes, oh, we got this. He turns around his dugout, takes the hat, slams it to the ground, fist pumping. It was awesome to see him get so excited and fired up, knowing that his team was going to Sulphur. All emotion, man. It was awesome to see.
Yeah, so congratulations to all 2 teams. Again, it'll be CCA, and one thing that a lot of people didn't realize, because I actually had some people yesterday ask me after Mass, hey, man, CCA's in the championship in E.D. White. Oh, hold your horses. CCA's actually in the semifinal.
Yeah.
They have to win too, but so does E.D. White, right? So the line of command sort of for CCA is to take care of Ouachita Christian, and then to take on whoever it is the next day, Tuesday and Wednesday, the next day. And for E.D. White, it's a little different. It'll be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 2:00 every single day at McMurray. And we wish both teams well. You want to prognosticate? What do you think might happen along the way?
Print the shirts. CCA is going undefeated. I look, man, you look at it, they're facing an Ouachita Christian team that does have a big arm, but he's not going to be on the full 7 days of rest, which I think helps CCA. CCA is going to have their arm, Gisclair, who's going to be on more than 7 days rest. So I think that they got a good matchup there. And then when you're facing a team that's not going to have their full staff in the second day, I think that, as you said a second ago, the semifinals is more in question than the finals maybe would be. So I like the Lions. And on the flip side, not to be a Bayou homer, how could you bet against the team that's won 6 games in a row and they're hot? And yeah, Turlings did just beat Vanderbilt Catholic, but you read between the lines there, A lot of those runs were unearned runs. Vanderbilt did a lot of things to help Turlings. I don't think E.D. White right now, the way they're playing, is going to do those things. I think that the Cardinals and the Lions both have very, very good chances to come home and win state championships.
Do want to mention this. Your state champion in Division II Select last year was Turlings Catholic. Your state champion in Division II 2 years ago was E.D. White. Those teams are playing each other. And I'm going to hold to my theory that the big teams in this area, the ones you sort of got to watch out for, the ones that are E.D. White, Vanderbilt Catholic, Shaw, to a certain extent, obviously Turlings Catholic, when they're in your division, because they're not in your division for a lot of things, but they are for this. And I think that the cream sort of rises to the top when you get to this point. Before I let you go, and I know you have, we got on a little bit late, and I know you need to get to the radio station and things like that. How about the situation with a track and field? I was really impressed with the number of kids that we had that finished in the top 3. Another thing, just one more, because I'm going to forget. I have that little mind up here. I don't say this now, Casey. I was thinking E.D. White came out 3rd in the track meet, right, for 4A. So they're 3rd, Bruley, and then I forgot who it was. But the 2 schools ahead of them were public schools. And if they did this like they do every other sport almost, I say that. They don't do it to the Olympic sports. But if they would take the Olympic sports and make them select and non-select, E.D. White actually would have won a state championship for the boys. But they didn't. And actually, even to take it down to a microcosm and how it's all a game of interest, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think Jalen Coleman had a photo finish in a race where they gave it. I say they gave it. I'm not saying they gave it, but the kid from Bruley got first place. That changes the point system. If Jalen Coleman would have got first place, and E.D. White possibly does have a chance to move up at least into the runner-up position. So can you imagine that? A kid from Vanderbilt actually helping out a kid from E.D. White, right?
Look, to start off with that Jalen Coleman thing, that was insane. He lost by a nanosecond, man. Like, it was so close. You see, like, these horse races that go to the photo finishes or these Olympic races, like, it was that. He lost by just a smidge. So shout out to him, almost winning a gold medal, but shout out to the kid who beat him, because my God, he fished Jalen Coleman really fast. And then the next thing that stood out to me is, Stan, it was incredible to see the number of local schools that were competing and were medaling. I'm looking at gold medals right now. Vanderbilt, E.D. White, Central Lafourche, South Lafourche, Ellender. I mean, like, everybody that was there was having some student athletes that were competing and were competing at a high level. And then the next thing is we talked about this a little bit last week. How in the heck do you have a point guard win the state championship in the shot put? That's what Vanderbilt does. Tiana Stewart shows up, throws 39 feet, 1.25 inches. Like, she's not a big kid, man, but you watch her throw that ball, and it doesn't look like she's not a big kid, because that thing flies. So, unbelievable performance by our locals. E.D. White, as you mentioned, almost wins the state championship on the boys' side. And we just had so many kids, like, just score points, man. I'm looking down the list. Like, it would take me too long to read the list. We had so many kids score points for their teams. It was an incredible showing. We really did do an excellent job this year on the track and field side.
I agree. Kudos to Central Lafourche. They actually score a bundle of points in 5A, which is never easy. You're right. The Tiana Stewart thing, I don't get it. I don't understand. And then she may be very technical sound, but I can't imagine coming out of basketball only about a month ago that so in other words, I'm saying next year as a senior, the sky's the limit. I mean, there's probably, she's going to add to that. We do well in pole vaulting in the area, and we had a lot of pole vaulters do well. From E.D. White from South Lafourche, Vanderbilt, I was a little surprised didn't have a pole vaulter in there like they usually do. But yeah, congratulations to all of those kids. A terrific meet for them. I know the Cortez family. I just, it tugs at my heartstrings because I was friends with Joe Fake, and his granddaughter Emily actually signed to go play at Centenary last week. Emily Cortez, don't get the Fake confused. Her mother is a Fake, but her little brother actually came out second in the shot put there at the state meet. So a lot of good efforts by a lot of kids in our area. Go ahead.
Yeah. Look, but before we wrap up the track and field talking, it's a little bit outside of our area, but it's someone in a local district. So I want to make sure we shout this out. Marley Richard of Deshnerhan won 4 golds this weekend. She won the triple jump, long jump, 100 meters, 200 meters. I don't know if that's ever been done before. So a young lady from Deshnerhan, I don't know where she's going to school. I know it's going to be somewhere. She won 4 golds this year in the 5A meet. That's unbelievable.
That is unheard of. That is unheard of. I've heard of maybe a sprinter who did it because they were attached to a relay team that was very good. But to do that like that is very, very impressive. I'm glad you noted that. I'm glad you noted that. Your agenda real quick for the week, or are you just kind of playing it by ear?
Let's see who advances. We should be out there at some point. Looking forward to it, man. I really think it's going to be a special week for our area. But it is also a little melancholy, too, because it's like, well, once this is done, like, I'm going to be bored for a little bit. But
No, you're not, because I'm going to grab you in the summertime to come with me on HTV, and I'm going to abuse you in the summer.
yeah, looking forward to it. We got spring football and all some other things on tap as well. So, yeah, I'd say it's going to be boredom. It's really not going to be. But this is our swan song for the 2024-2025 school year.
Agree. Hopefully we're getting together and talking about some good stuff next week, and then we'll see what the summer holds. Thanks for everything.
Absolutely, bud.
Thanks to Casey for coming on with us. We hope that those 2 schools, CCA and EDY, do well in Sulphur. We'll keep an eye on them, and certainly we'll report on them next Monday. We hope you're here to catch up with everything that our kids are doing. And if you think the summer slows down, it doesn't, folks. It may slow down a tad bit, but all of our sports play in the summer. All of them. Doesn't matter what your season is. They all get in. There's a basketball league. There's a soccer league. There's a 7-on-7 football league. Obviously, there's baseball going on. There are leagues that are going on everywhere, and we'll keep you up with it. And we hope you're right here to tune in because, again, the sole goal of all of this is to shine a light on our student athletes in the Bayou region. Hope you have a terrific week. We'll see you next Monday. Take care, everybody.